What is up, everybody? This is JP with jpfitnesspro.com. Please keep checking back on my website, jpfitnesspro.com. Here in a couple weeks, max, maybe a month or two, I'm going to have some hypertrophy and powerlifting programs up on my website. Also an option for some customized training plans if you guys need something specifically tailored towards you. But please keep checking back there. I also have my podcast free to download on my website. So if you're not someone who likes listening to YouTube, or you don't have much data to listen to YouTube while you're driving, but you want to listen to my podcasts, you can download those there for free. Okay, into today's video. Here I'm going to give you guys some techniques that you can implement into your program to help make your workout shorter without sacrificing any or maybe just not much gains over the long run. Because some of you guys don't have much time to work out and you need to get in the gym and you need to go. So I'm going to go over 4 techniques. The first one I recommend for strength or hypertrophy. I don't recommend the other 3 for strength though, because strength is a skill and you don't want to hinder it. Well, I guess you could do a contrast set for strength, but you have to be very particular. So I would say the first 2 can be used for strength. This one really easily. This one you got to be a little careful with. The last 2 don't use for strength. All of them though can be used for hypertrophy. The first one's going to be antagonist paired sets. Basically, it's when you pair sets of opposing muscle groups. They basically do opposite motions and use opposite muscle groups, kind of like in an alternating fashion. Typically, you would have like an exercise, then you do all the sets of the exercise, and then you have another exercise, and then you do all those sets. So for example, we'll take a bench press and a bench over row. You do a set of bench press, you take your rest period, bench, rest, until you completed 4 sets, and then you go into bench over row. With APS, you do a set of bench press, you rest, and then you do a set of bench over row, rest, bench press, rest, bench over row, until you complete all the sets for those 2 exercises. What this does though is that because you're doing opposing muscle groups, you can cut your rest period in half. So typically, if you were doing a 2 or 3 minute rest period for a bench press in between sets, you could do a 1 or 1.5 minute rest period. So whatever your rest period is, I recommend you cut it in half or slightly longer than half, but just you can cut it in half. So if you're doing 3 minute rest periods, do 1.5 minutes. Now, when you think about it, if you have a bench press, a 1.5 minute rest period, and then a bench over row, and then a 1.5 minute rest period, both rest periods plus the time that you're doing the bench over row is all rest for your pushing, pushing muscles, your delts, your pecs, and then your triceps, so that when you come back to your next set of bench press, you really technically have rested about 4 minutes, maybe 3.5 minutes. So you're killing as many sets as you normally would without really hindering gains, basically almost as half the time. So again, this one could be for strength or hypertrophy. The next one is contrast sets, which are very similar to antagonist paired sets, except they're structured a little bit differently. So what you do is, instead of pairing 2 exercises of like opposite muscle groups, you just pair 2 exercises of completely different muscle groups. And I'll give you an example of how you can use this for strength. If you got bench press, let's just say you're doing heavy bench press. Let's just say you're doing a heavy squat. Right after you're done with squat, you could go do a set of bicep curls. Again, you shouldn't be training to 10 RPEs. Like, don't train at failure when you're doing this technique. But if you're doing a squat to a 7 RPE, heavy for you, and then you go over to a set of bicep curls, and then you take your rest period after the bicep curls. Bicep curls really don't affect the squat that much at all. I still think for this technique though, you should use regular rest periods. So if you rest 3 minutes between heavy squats, after your bicep curls, rest 3 minutes. But again, the bicep curls only take 30 seconds to a minute, versus when you do them regularly, you take a rest, bicep curl. So you're kind of almost cutting that time in half. I would not couple this though with contrast sets. I would not couple another heavy movement, like a big compound movement, if your goal is strength. So don't do a heavy set of squats and then do a heavy set of bench over rows. I guarantee you the fatigue is still going to carry over. So if your goal is strength with contrast sets, pair like a compound movement, like a bench press with the calf raise, or a squat with the bicep curl. For hypertrophy, yeah, I guess technically you could do a squat and then a bench over row, but the fatigue is going to be really high. I still wouldn't recommend that. The next one is supersets. You guys already know about these. Supersets are just stringing together multiple sets of an exercise together, of different exercises, but of the same muscle group. So for example, you could do a bench press Then you could go to overhead press, and then you can go to a lateral raise. Those kind of all target the chest or the shoulders. Or you could do all the same, that very direct muscle group. Like you do all chest if you want. You could do like a bench press and then a push up, and then, you know, maybe like a light dumbbell press or something. It just depends how you want to work it. These I would definitely do not recommend for strength, and I only recommend for hypertrophy. And again, these bottom two, you probably will see decreased volume over time, which means that you're probably not going to see as much of like gains as you would as if you did normal sets. But again, this is for people who don't have time to work out. So your options are don't work out or work out quickly. So versus your other options, again, this is going to be some of the best things you can do. So again, supersets, you can string together multiple exercises of the same muscle group or similar muscle groups. For drop sets, again, you guys probably heard these before too. I do recommend these as well. That's taking the same exercise, just decreasing the load, but combining multiple sets into one. For example, we'll take a bench press again. You do bench press with 225 to a 7 RPE. And then once you hit that 7 RPE, you immediately take a plate off each side and then do 135 to a 7 RPE. So you're now doing kind of 2 sets of bench press into one, without having to do every single set of bench press in and of itself, and then having a rest period between each one. Now, again, with this one in supersets, you are going to see a decrease in volume over time. When you do drop sets, that second drop is not as much volume, removing a lot less weight. But again, it's either that or don't work out, because you don't have time. You can't do traditional sets. So again, these are the 4 techniques I recommend for people who are lifting but don't want to kind of hinder their gains. They don't want to sacrifice everything they have and they want to still make gains. Again, these 2 for strength, this one the best for strength, this you got to be a little more careful for, all of them for hypertrophy. All right, if you guys have any questions, comments, recommendations for future videos, please leave them down below. I will be checking the comments. Until then, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.